Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Sam from Historic Travels and welcome to another video. And as always, before we get started today, I'd just like to take a quick moment to welcome all my new subs and to thank everybody who's been leaving me comments and messages down below. Thank you all so much, I really appreciate it. And if you would like to take a couple extra steps to help support the channel a little bit more, there's a merch store and a Patreon for this channel in the links below. Thank you all so much for all your support. Alright guys, so hey, I think you all have waited long enough. It is now time to continue the complete timeline series of the RMS Lusitania. When we last left the RMS Lusitania, the Cunard Line had just finished construction on this brand new vessel, and the ship was heading to Liverpool to begin its maiden voyage. Alright guys, well hey, without any further ado, let's begin today's video. On September 7th, 1907, at 4:30 p.m., the RMS Lusitania steamed into Liverpool for the first time in order to pick up passengers for her maiden voyage. Under the command of Captain James Watt, the Cunard Line had their hopes high for this first crossing on board the Lusitania. But you see, the Cunard Line also had another goal for the Lusitania's maiden voyage. They were hoping that the Lusitania would be able to win the blue ribbon on its first crossing, which would showcase to the world that the Lusitania wasn't only the biggest ship in the world, but she was also the fastest. Now, once the Lusitania arrived in Liverpool and began to pick up passengers, the ship didn't remain in Liverpool for very long. This wasn't like the Titanic's visit to Southampton, where the ship stayed there for around a week while it gathered up supplies and everything like that. The Lusitania was fully stocked and ready to go when it arrived in Liverpool, so the only thing it had to do once it arrived in port was pick up passengers and then head out again. So the ship arrived at roughly 4:30 p.m. on September 7th, 1907, and then by 9 p.m. she had all of her passengers aboard and steamed out of Liverpool to begin her maiden voyage. The next day, the ship arrived in Queenstown, Ireland at somewhere around 9 a.m., and once again, the ship just picked up more passengers, and then around noon, the RMS Lusitania steamed out of Queenstown, heading out into open sea to begin her first voyage across the Atlantic, bound for New York City. Now, for the most part, the Lusitania's first westbound crossing across the Atlantic went pretty smoothly. However, a few days into the voyage, a heavy fog moved in, and as a result of this fog, the Cunard Line had to slow down the Lusitania. This, as a result, would affect the Lusitania's arrival time in New York City, which means that on the Lusitania's first voyage across the Atlantic, the ship failed to win the blue ribbon. However, despite the issue with the fog, the Lusitania's first westbound crossing was a huge success. The Lusitania arrived in New York City on September the 13th, 1907, and the entire voyage took 5 days and 54 minutes to complete. This is still a very impressive crossing time despite the Lusitania being slowed down by fog. And believe it or not, the Lusitania only missed the blue ribbon by just 32 minutes. So even though the Lusitania didn't get the blue ribbon on its first westbound crossing, the Cunard Line was hopeful that the Lusitania would still win the blue ribbon and become known as the fastest and biggest ship in the world. However, despite the Lusitania not winning the blue ribbon, hundreds of thousands of people still came to the pier to marvel at this brand new revolutionary ocean liner. They knew very soon that the Lusitania would claim the blue ribbon and would be the world's biggest and fastest ocean liner. Now, the Lusitania remained in New York City for precisely 1 week, and during that time, the Cunard Line allowed the public to tour the Lusitania. And as a result of this caused the public to fall even more in love with this brand new revolutionary ocean liner. After spending 1 week in New York City, the RMS Lusitania raised anchor and steamed out of New York Harbor, bound for Liverpool once again for her first eastbound crossing across the Atlantic. And just like her first westbound crossing, the Lusitania would also make a quick stop in Queenstown along the way. Now, the Cunard Line hoped that, at least for her first eastbound crossing, maybe, just maybe, the Lusitania could win the blue ribbon for fastest eastbound crossing, if the weather was better, of course. However, the Cunard Line's hopes for this were quickly lost, because once again, the Lusitania encountered a very heavy fog, and the ship had to slow down once again for her first eastbound crossing across the Atlantic. This, as a result, would delay the Lusitania's arrival time. On this voyage, it took the Lusitania precisely 5 days and 4 hours to cross the Atlantic, a few hours longer than her first westbound crossing. So, unfortunately, once again, the Lusitania failed to win the blue ribbon. However, it wouldn't stay that way for very long. In October of 1907, the Lusitania was finally ready to begin another westbound voyage across the Atlantic, and the Cunard Line hoped that this time around, if the weather was better, the Lusitania would finally be able to claim the blue ribbon. And guess what? Cunard Line got their wish. The weather was much better, and the Lusitania was now able to proceed across the Atlantic at her maximum speed. She crossed the Atlantic in just 4 days, 19 hours, and 53 minutes, officially making the Lusitania the fastest ship in the world, and finally securing the blue ribbon for the Lusitania. However, even though the Lusitania had finally succeeded in claiming the blue ribbon, the ship wouldn't be able to hold on to that title for very long, because in December of 1907, the Lusitania's sister ship, the RMS Mauretania, officially entered service and stole the blue ribbon from the Lusitania. However, this didn't bother the Cunard Line that much, because it was the Lusitania's sister ship that claimed the blue ribbon. So as long as the blue ribbon was housed in the same family of ships, this didn't bother the Cunard Line all that much. Now, the Cunard Line would have had no way of knowing this in 1907, but the success of the Lusitania and Mauretania had gotten the attention of one of the Cunard Line's biggest competitors, the White Star Line. You see, they saw the Lusitania and Mauretania as a big threat to their company. So the head of the White Star Line, a man by the name of J. Bruce Ismay, had a talk with J.P. Morgan, the head of IMM, and together they decided that they wanted to build some brand new ships to compete with the Lusitania and Mauretania. So, they went to the head of the Harland and Wolff shipyard, William Peary, and discussed the idea for these new ships with him. And he came up with the idea for a whole new class of liner. A liner designed not to compete with the Lusitania and Mauretania in terms of speed, but to try to outclass them in terms of luxury and size. Now, eventually, this whole new class of liner would be called the Olympic class of ocean liners, and it would be comprised of 3 ships. These ships would become known as the Olympic. The second ship would be called the... You know what? I can't remember what this ship was called. I think this ship was really famous for some reason. It's called Titan. It's something like that. Do any of you know? Please let me know in the chat below. And then the third and final ship of the Olympic class would become known as the Britannic. Now, I'm not going to be going into any more detail about these ships in this series because this series is about the Lusitania. However, I've already done complete timeline series showcasing the story of all 3 of these ships. And if you would like to learn more and watch those videos, I will include a link to those videos in the description below. Alright, jumping back to the Lusitania and Mauretania now. Over the next year or so, things proceeded pretty smoothly with both of these vessels, and no major incidents happened. Both ships continued to operate normally, and the public loved sailing on both of these vessels. Now, in the year 1909, the Cunard Line took the Lusitania and swapped out her propeller blades, and believe it or not, the Lusitania was finally able to reclaim the blue ribbon from the Mauretania. However, it only did this with the westbound crossing, not the east. So, a bit of a rivalry broke out between the Lusitania and Mauretania, with each ship trying to outclass the other in terms of speed. And then, believe it or not, in July of 1909, the Lusitania succeeded in taking the entire blue ribbon in terms of both eastbound and westbound crossings from the Mauretania. However, this success was short-lived, because in the exact same month, the Mauretania once again stole the blue ribbon from the Lusitania. Now, the next major event to happen to the Lusitania occurred in October of 1909, when this ship participated in a celebration. You see, in New York City in October of 1909, there was a celebration going on called the Hudson-Fulton Celebration. This celebration was to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the discovery of the Hudson River, and it was also there to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Robert Fulton's first successful commercial application of a paddle steamship. So because they were celebrating this steamship, they also took the opportunity during this celebration to showcase the latest in transportation technology. And this is why the Lusitania was on display during this celebration, because they were using it to showcase the latest in steamship technology. Now, believe it or not, steamships weren't the only mode of transportation being showcased during this event. Believe it or not, the Wright brothers had their very own airplane on display during this celebration. And also, believe it or not, there's a photo of the Wright brothers airplane with the Lusitania in the background. And guys, let me tell you, the historian in me just absolutely loves this picture because, I mean, I never knew about this until I looked into it. And it's so cool to see the Wright brothers airplane and the Lusitania in the same photo side by side. Now, a few months after the Hudson-Fulton celebration, the first real major incident with the Lusitania occurred. On January 10, 1910, while the Lusitania was heading to New York City from Liverpool, the ship encountered a rogue wave roughly 75 feet high. Now, due to the design of the Lusitania, she was able to cut through the wave instead of riding on top of it. However, this came at a cost. As the wave washed over the ship, it slammed into the Lusitania's bridge. This, as a result, damaged the Lusitania's forecastle, and it also smashed every single window on the bridge. Now, the bridge itself was also pushed aft by a few inches. That just showcases the power of this wave. And it also put a permanent depression of a few inches in the Lusitania's decking and the bridge of the ship. However, despite this damage, the Lusitania wasn't at risk of sinking, so the ship continued on to New York. The ship arrived a few hours late, and luckily no one was injured. The passengers of the Lusitania were just a little bit shaken up. After this event with the rogue wave happened, the Cunard Line wasted no time in repairing the Lusitania and getting it put back out to sea as quickly as possible. And honestly, once this was done, things proceeded pretty smoothly with the Lusitania and its sister ship Mauretania over the course of the next few years. The passengers loved sailing on these vessels. Cunard Line was a very popular company to sail with, and yeah, I mean, Cunard Line couldn't ask for a better situation in terms of operating both the Lusitania and the Mauretania. However, that all changed on July 28, 1914, when a certain event occurred that would change the fate of both of these vessels forever. But you know what? I think we can talk about that in the next episode. This seems like a good place to pause the Lusitania timeline series for now. So I wanted to thank you all so much for watching. Be sure you leave a like, be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to tune in to the next episode as we continue the story of the RMS Lusitania. All right, everybody. Well, hey, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, everybody. Special thanks to our captain level Patreon supporters, Jeffrey Clayton, Dakota Charbonneau, Moosh, and Greg Gallick. Thank you all so much for all the support.